6 months after UNC's Board of Governors axed diversity and inclusion programs system-wide, leaders have outlined the next steps for UNCW.
That includes closing the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion. WECT's Ava Bringord spoke with university officials and former UNCW students today. Ava, university leaders say the decision reaffirms their commitment to equal opportunity, but neighbors say they aren't so sure.
Yeah, that's right, Fran. One former UNCW student that I spoke with that was very involved in the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion that's now closed. He says he's angry with the UNC system for removing a program that helped him find community.
Grief, anger, frustration.
That's the reaction from former UNC student Jarrell McQueen over UNC Wilmington's latest announcement. In a school-wide email, UNCW Chancellor Aswani Valetti announced plans to comply with the UNC system order to dismantle its diversity, equity, and inclusion policy across all campuses. The Board of Governors voted back in May to pass the mandate without discussion or debate.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
Valetti also announced UNCW will close the Office of Institutional Diversity, eliminating its Chief Diversity Officer, and shift the Cultural and Identity Centers to Student Affairs. The university confirmed to WECT that 13 employees were, quote, reassigned. McQueen says centers like the Upperman African American Cultural Center, Centro Hispano, and the Asian Heritage Center are safe spaces for students.
When it was different community events, programs, shows, different ways to help kind of unite just different groups and different people.
He feels the university system and UNCW should have put people first instead of politics. Now he fears what made those centers special could be lost for future students seeking inclusivity.
But it meant a world of a difference when you saw these individuals and people who were clocking in with purpose, and you felt that the moment you walked in.
Valetti, recognizing student and staff frustration, said, quote, I know this news may be difficult for some Seahawks to accept and absorb. Change is hard, and it'll take time to phase in and fully implement our new operations. However, what impact those changes have on campus remains to be seen.
Now, I've reached out to UNCW for an interview today, but was told by a spokesperson that no one was available at this time. For Chancellor Valetti's full statement to staff and to students, you can visit this story on our website. Ava Bringord, WECT News.